What happens after an airline shuts down? It came in the middle of the night. Don't come to the airport. By the early hours of May 2nd, 2026, every Spirit Airlines flight had been scrubbed. The ticket counters were shutting down one by one, and something like 91 of the airline's jets were just sitting there, dark and still, spread across 26 airports around the country. Around 17,000 people had finished their shifts the night before like it was any other night. They went to sleep with a job. They woke up to find the company they worked for had basically ceased to exist. Shutting down an airline is nothing like flipping the sign to closed and locking up a store. You can't just kill the lights and go home. You've got aircraft that have to physically be flown somewhere. You've got passengers holding tickets for flights that don't exist anymore. You've got gates and landing slots that rival carriers are already eyeing like hawks. And you've got thousands of workers who have to be told, one crew at a time, that there's nothing to come back to. What comes after a shutdown isn't really an ending. It's more like a machine being taken apart piece by piece, with each part getting dragged off in its own direction. Passengers are the first to feel it, and not everybody feels it the same way. If you'd paid with a credit or debit card, you were in decent shape. Spirit promised automatic refunds, and for most of those folks the money actually came back quick, with a big chunk of it reportedly landing in accounts by that same Saturday evening, the very day the airline went dark. The headache started for everyone who hadn't paid with plastic. Booked through a travel agent. You're on your own to go chase it down. Paid with a voucher or with Spirit's loyalty points. Your money just froze right where it was, to be sorted out later somewhere deep in the bankruptcy process, which, if we're being honest, usually means you're never seeing it again. And all those free Spirit points people had spent years piling up, you couldn't move them to another airline, couldn't spend them anywhere, just gone. Then you had the travellers stuck in the worst spot of all, the ones caught mid-trip. They'd already flown out on Spirit, and now there was no flight to bring them home. That's when the Department of Transportation stepped in and pulled together what they called rescue fares, spread across 9 different airlines, pretty much every carrier whose route map overlapped with Spirit's: United, JetBlue, Delta, American, Southwest, Frontier, Allegiant, Avalo, Breeze. United capped most of those seats at $199, a little more for the longest hauls. JetBlue threw out $99 one-way fares. Others knocked prices down on shared routes for a few days. But these were short lifelines, good for maybe a week. Miss that window, or find that even the discount was more than you could swing and you were figuring it out yourself. Some people took Hertz up on one-way rental deals and just drove. A few ended up weighing something crazy like a 10-hour drive from Atlanta to Miami against a $600 last-minute plane ticket. The passengers were the crisis everybody could see. The quieter one was sitting out on the tarmac. 91 jets, scattered all over the network, parked wherever they happened to be when the whole operation just stopped. And here's the part that catches people off guard. Spirit didn't even own most of them. Out of a fleet of roughly 170 aircraft, all but about 48 were controlled by leasing companies. Names like AerCap, Avalon, and Air Lease Corporation. The second Spirit quit flying, those lessors wanted their very expensive machines back, which turns out to be a lot harder than it sounds. The planes were stranded at gates and out on taxiways, and nobody on the ground had the authority to move them. Airport staff wouldn't go near them, so the leasing companies brought in a firm that does exactly this kind of thing for a living. Nomadic Aviation Group, specialists in aircraft repossession. Their whole job is sending qualified pilots to walk right up to a grounded jet and fly it off the field. And in a strange twist, they ended up hiring around 20 of Spirit's own former pilots to do the flying. Picture it, a pilot rolling up in jeans and a t-shirt, no uniform, trying to talk airport security into believing that yes, he really is allowed to climb into that aircraft and take off in it. One nomadic executive described the whole thing as mass confusion. You walk up to whoever's in charge, tell them you're there to repossess the airplane, and the first word out of their mouth is always the same: no. The jets they get their hands on are flown out to the desert, mostly to Phoenix Goodyear Airport and Pinal Air Park in Arizona, where the dry air keeps rust away and planes can sit for a long stretch without rotting. From there, it's up to the lessors to decide each plane's fate. Some get repainted, reconfigured, and leased out to a new airline within a matter of months. Others get parted out, their engines, landing gear, and avionics stripped off and sold separately. On some of these jets, the 2 engines alone are worth more than the airframe they're bolted to. An airline can die, but the aircraft almost never do. They just get folded quietly into somebody else's fleet. Refunding tickets and towing away jets, those are the obvious costs. But there's another one, and it reaches people who never once set foot on a Spirit flight. When a discount carrier disappears from a route, the price of flying that route goes up for everybody. One look at the aviation data found that after Spirit pulled out, average fares on its old routes jumped by around 23%, roughly $60 more on a round trip, while the number of people actually flying them dropped about 20%. Fewer passengers and every one of them paying more. And Spirit was no small fish. At its biggest hub down in Fort Lauderdale, it had been carrying more than a quarter of all passengers the year before it went under, more than any other airline at that airport. The rivals pounced fast. JetBlue announced 11 brand new routes out of Fort Lauderdale within days. American and United started sizing up bigger planes and extra flights wherever they'd gone head-to-head with Spirit. But in the smaller cities, the ones where Spirit was the only ultra-low-cost game in town, nobody's rushing in to fill the hole. Those places might just lose their cheapest flights, plain and simple, and the people who flew Spirit precisely because it was the only fare they could afford are the ones getting priced right out. That's the thing about a bargain carrier that people miss. It doesn't just move its own passengers around, it drags everybody else's prices down too. When Spirit was selling a seat for $89, Delta and American had to keep theirs somewhere in the neighborhood. Take that pressure away, and the reason to stay cheap goes right along with it. Behind the fares and the dark gates were the 17,000, about 14,000 direct employees and another 3,000 or so contractors. Pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, gate agents, ramp crews, folks in the offices. That overnight timing wasn't just the cruelty of bad luck either. Telling people while the last flights were still up in the air helped make sure every jet touched down safely and every crew was accounted for before the news reached most passengers. After that, though, their roads split hard. The pilots landed the softest. There's still real demand for experienced jet pilots in the US, and Spirit flew nothing but the Airbus A320 family, one of the most common aircraft on the planet, so their skills carried right over. Several of the majors fast-tracked their interviews, and American even ran recruiting events aimed straight at them. Flight attendants had a rougher, tighter race for jobs. Mechanics and ground crews landed somewhere in the middle, their skills wanted but not always in the city they were living in. From the outside, Spirit's collapse looked like it came out of nowhere. In reality, the forces behind it had been grinding away for years. Engine trouble with Pratt & Whitney had left dozens of its planes grounded for months, and the money Spirit got back for it didn't come close to covering the damage. A rescue merger with JetBlue got blocked on antitrust grounds back in early 2024. The airline hadn't actually turned a profit since before the pandemic, and it bled somewhere around $2.76 billion in 2025 alone. It filed for bankruptcy not once but twice, first in late 2024, then again in August 2025. And when the conflict involving Iran sent jet fuel prices roughly doubling in early 2026, whatever cash was left went up in smoke with it. Spirit isn't the first carrier to vanish like this, and it won't be the last one either. Pan Am and Eastern both went down in 1991. TWA got swallowed up by American in 2001. Over in Britain, Monarch collapsed in 2017, and Thomas Cook's Airline followed it under in 2019. The shape of it looks almost the same every single time. Costs climb, the debt piles up, the cash runs out, and the airline either gets bought or gets broken apart. The ultra-low-cost version of the story came with its own particular squeeze. Stand back far enough and a shutdown looks like one clean event. Flying one day, gone the next. Get up close though, and it's a slow disassembly. The jets get repossessed and repainted for somebody else. The routes get carved up. The gates get handed off. The pilots get hired across town. Every last piece of the airline gets soaked up by the same industry that was competing against it. Which is why, in a way, airlines don't really die. They just get taken apart. And what's left behind at the end of it isn't the company at all.